Good evening, St. Louis, live from Energizer Park. This is the City Hub postgame on Sports Hub STL, brought to you by Hot Shots, home of St. Louis sports fans since 1990, and presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. St. Louis City advances in the U.S. Open Cup, obviously in a tournament with a lot of history here in St. Louis, and this year it was important for them to advance here, and they do. 2-0 over Union Omaha. It wasn't a pretty game. Took them a while to get the goals, but they did eventually get those goals and walk away with a very important win. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That's Will Bratton. We'll be with you here until we're not, talking about a City win. Will, your opening thoughts on a victory for St. Louis City SC?
Let me tell you, there are two things that matter to me the most from this matchup here. One, they got the job done and they got a result. St. Louis City SC will advance to the next round of the U.S. Open Cup. That's what you needed. That had to happen. If that didn't happen, we'd have a serious problem. Number two, Joao Klaus scored a goal. And that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things in this tournament. It doesn't do anything for his stats. Obviously, it's an all-competition stat, sure. But what it does is help his confidence, get him informed. What did he do immediately after scoring that goal? He immediately nearly nets two more, almost had a 3-minute hat trick. If it wasn't for Mackay Joyner passing up a tap to him. If Mackay Joyner slots him that ball, just literally taps it to Klaus, it's a tap-in goal. But Joyner understandably went for the heroics. I can't blame him for that. But Joao Klaus would have had one immediately after that. Right after that play, he almost gets another on deflecting a service from, I believe it was Pompeu, and that went just wide. So he nearly had 3 in 3 minutes. And that's what you want to see. You want to see a confident, designated striker, designated player that's your striker who can score goals. And we need Klaus to be in that form for St. Louis to actually be productive in the MLS and also deeper in this tournament should they continue to win. So those are my number two, or my two most important things by far.
Fair enough. And Ryan Fraley jumping into the chat. Please, everyone, jump into the chat. Make sure you like and subscribe here on Sports Hub STL, because every time we go live after an event like this, you will get a notification so you know that we're going live. And the important thing with Sports Hub STL is even with something like the U.S. Open Cup, we're still going live. We still got somebody here live. And we got Will down at one of our satellite offices because we're just tentacles everywhere here for Sports Hub STL. Ryan Fraley is involved on the chat. Get involved with Ryan. Offense looked much better. Just need work on finishing. Overall, I'm pleased with how we played. I have a slightly different take on that for me, because today the only reason you won is because of some good finishing. I was very disappointed with the creation for the first 80 minutes of this game. And yeah, the last 10 minutes, you got a flurry there. After you open up scoring against a team like this, who's then playing for the biggest moments of their season, which is beating an MLS team in the U.S. Open Cup. They're down 1-0. They got to tie things up and force extra time. Of course, you were able to get a bunch more attempts. The fact that you can't break down Union Omaha for the first 70 minutes for the most part, that's problematic. And I know people don't like being doom and gloom after a win, just like people don't like being positive after a loss. But I'm just being honest. You had to show something. You had to show a level of quality against a team that didn't have your level of talent. And despite playing a very heavy MLS City 1 roster, I don't think they did that for the majority of the game, and that's a little worrisome.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I've been notably on the City Hub show brought to you by Hot Shots and DraftKings. I have talked a lot about being positive, right? I've been the guy who's been pissing Rock off all the time because he thinks I'm too positive. And, like I said, Joao Klaus scored a goal. They got the result they needed. But in a match like this, you gotta dominate. And you gotta dominate for 90 minutes. St. Louis City SC, this could have looked very different had that lucky deflected shot somehow gotten past Ben Lunt and City had gone down 0-1 relatively early in this match. Had that happened, it could have looked completely different. And we could be having a totally different conversation because City were not dominant for 90 minutes. I would argue with Rock that it wasn't the whole of the first 80 minutes. There were some good spurts, and I would say it was really the last 20 where they felt dominant versus just the last 10. But overall, his sentiment is 100% correct, and it needs to be talked about because you can't just walk away from this and say that was good enough because it wasn't. You got the result. You did what you had to do, but you got to be better in those big moments.
It wasn't enough. I mean, tonight, I need there was one of two things needed to happen for me to come out of tonight with a really big positive bent. And it was you either played tonight's lineup and you scored 4 or 5 pretty quickly, or you play or the game plays out like this, but it's because you play a very heavy lineup of youth and City 2 players. Yeah. And neither of those things happened. You got a combination of the two in the worst way possible, which was you played a lot of your starters and it was a slow game where you didn't dominate. And that's just worrisome when you look forward to the schedule, when you look at what happened last time they played San Diego. It's hard for me to take what a lot of the team did here and a lot of those guys who are going to play on Saturday. And listen, we'll talk about my issues with the overlap of what I expect to be the lineup on Saturday and players who played tonight. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's just, I know it's not fair to criticize a 2-0 win, but it is fair to criticize 70 minutes of poor offensive football, no matter what the result is, bottom line. And that's what we saw for the most part. And Brian Royce, who I assume says his last name much like the now hated former Borussia Dortmund star here in St. Louis, Marco. But Brian Royce says too many back passes and not enough attacking. I don't even know if it's that thing, because I think getting mad about back passes is a wasted breath, because I just don't think that was the issue. It was that when they're trying to slice them through lines, they don't complete very many of them. And when they get in set moments, there's not enough movement. They're like an average basketball team. That, yeah, when things are in transition, they're fine. Things are open, lanes are open, they got to be running, so why aren't we running? But as soon as the defense settles down and gets into the half court and gets into the final third, and the defense gets to set, the only thing that's going to create offense at that point is movement and passing, and every once in a while some one-on-one dribbling. But they just don't have the movement to even get to the point where the passing is going to matter, because I truly believe they have the passes on this team, Marcel Hartel, Edward Lubin, but there's no movement in the opposing half, and I just don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I agree. The movement off the ball wasn't good enough, and we saw this visibly with Edward Lubin's frustration in the second half when he came in. A lot of times he would get the ball, he would turn, open his hips, and there'd be nobody making some sort of run in the midfield or checking, into or out of a passing lane so they could advance the ball with a 1-2 or, what have you. But I will say, though, too many. I'll play Royce's advocate here a little bit with too many back passes, not enough attacking. As soon as Lubin came in, the one thing he was doing was kind of looking direct. He found Betcher in behind. He found Joyner in behind. He sent Pompeu up the left-hand side once. And I think that was really effective for City. I would agree that they need to look a little more direct. And I really think that's a run of form and confidence in the attack thing. I think City need to be a lot more confident in those attacking moments, finding those sequences, letting a quarterback per se, like a Leuven or a Morales or an Ustrak, or even a Marcel Hartel, be able to get the ball in those slightly dropped central locations. Obviously, when Hartel gets it, he's going to be higher up. Even Ustrak might be a little higher up than a Leuven or a Morales. But overall, they've got to be confident in letting those players get the ball up the pitch, going direct. You got to trust your strikers. You got to trust your dribblers like Silva and Pompeu to collect the ball in those spaces and do something with it. So I'll play Royce's advocate a little bit there, and I'll say I like back passes at times. I like keeping possession. I'm a big fan of possession ball, but I would agree that there were at times definitely City were struggling to find those direct lanes to play through.
Yeah, and Lubin had a great second half. There's no doubt about that one. And I'm a big Edward Lubin fan, and I can't wait to see what he brings back to this team. 6 passes into the final third for Lubin in just that second half, which was third on the team behind Timo Baumgartel and Kyle Hebert. I will say Alfredo Morales, before he went down, went from, I think, like 2 of those to 5 of those on just 35 touches. So Morales, before he went out with the tightness, he was showing something a little bit there. And also when you look at chances created, Edward Lubin comes in to the game and he ties on the team with 2, for second with 2. Kyle Hebert had 4. Jana Silva had 2. Cedric Teuchert had 2. Also came into the game late. Celio Pompeo had 2. So, I mean, that's my thing is, I mean, look at it right there. I mean, we're talking about Edward Leuven and Cedric Toyshirt getting 4 of your chances created when your starters only got 8 total throughout the entire game. So, I mean, that just right there is showing you just the lack of punch there in the first half and why it changed in the second half. And it's just, I'm fine with saying, you caught a good team in the second half with a good switch, and that's good enough. But in this game against this team, it's not good enough. This is a USL League One team, and while in a lot of instances you can say, well, you're playing one of the best ones, Omaha's kind of struggling to start this year. This is a team that's won the league 2 out of the last 4 years. They finished first in the regular season 3 out of the last 5 years, or 3 out of the last 4 years. And this year they're struggling out of the gate 1-1-2. And so this is not the game to just kind of screw around for 70 minutes and not get things done. And that was the disappointing thing. It wasn't a lack of finishing that led to a 0-0 tie to the first half. It was a lack of any sort of progression into the final half and any sort of dangerous play in the final third. And unfortunately, that's all we've been hearing. That's something we keep talking about this season, and that's problematic.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I will say some of the stats might look like Rock's kind of spewing a little bit of BS when you look at total shots, 24, shots on target, 10, but only one big chance. And I think that's the most telling sign is one big chance registered against a USL League One side is not good enough. Even if you're generating shots, you have guys getting a little bit creative. You got to do more.
It's regression because it wasn't good enough in the other games, but there are other MLS games where they created 2 or 3 big chances.
Exactly. And 5 in one game.
And for the most part, the 5 big chances, that was LA Galaxy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's good enough. But for the most part, even creating just 2 or 3 big chances against MLS teams hasn't been good enough. And so creating one against a USL League One team, it's not good enough. And now, as we move past this game, because I don't have a lot more to say other than just I was disappointed from the game. I was I guess disappointed with the lack of ingenuity and creativity with the lineup. There's something to be said for having a consistency and saying this is what we do. We're just going to let people step right in, and they did that tonight. They still kind of played the back 3, back 5. Makai Joyner was in a volume role for the first half. The second half was a lot more kind of just find zones and attack them. Didn't seem as much of a set formation in the second half as much. So I'm having trouble diagnosing exactly what it was supposed to look like out there. But I just saw a lack of ingenuity and creativity with the roster. I'm really wondering going forward what the plan is and how they expect to be able to field the most optimal roster for San Diego. And I know the U.S. Open Cup is important, but you pull back a little bit. You play more young players in this game so that you have more players available to play a full 90 without any restrictions against San Diego. And I'm surprised we saw Leuven. I'm surprised we saw Klaus, Giannis Horn, Vollum for an extended period of time because of the injury. The back 3 of Baumgartel, Hebert, and Yarrow, the same back 3 that you're starting over the weekend. Obviously, Nielsen's going to have to play. It just a lot of more miles on the tires for players that I already thought were kind of being stretched. Just a lot of questions when it comes to some nitty-gritty little things from this game that I'm still left asking.
Yeah, and honestly, for me, I will say I'm not terribly surprised we saw Leuven only because he's returning to form, and I think getting him brief minutes in this match actually made a lot of sense.
Okay. Brief is one thing, but
45 is fine. I think 45 is fine if you're a professional athlete.
He didn't train for a week and a month. He didn't train for 5 weeks.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he wasn't staying fit.
It means he wasn't staying match fit.
Potentially. It might not.
You cannot stay match fit away from your team's training schedule. It can't happen. It doesn't exist.
I mean, I kind of disagree. I think it can happen, not in large quantities. I wouldn't say he would be match fit. I mean, I'm not saying he would be match fit to jump right back in and be able to play 90 every weekend, but I think he could go from that, do a week and a half of training, maybe get a 45-minute shift in this match, and then be able to play like one subsequent 90-minute match. Obviously, we have a tight schedule in May coming up. So does that make a ton of sense? Maybe. I don't think 45 minutes really made that much sense for Leuven, but like I'm not opposed to him getting 45 tonight. Anything more than that, I would have had a problem.
Coming back after not practicing for 5 weeks and playing 22 minutes on Saturday, 45 minutes on Wednesday, and then potentially 45 minutes on Saturday again. So we're talking about 115 minutes in a week's time after not practicing or not staying match fit for 5 weeks. It just seems like a risk to take with such an important player when you're already dealing with so many other soft tissue injuries. That's
a fair point. That's a fair point. But I mean, the truth of the matter is we don't know exactly what his fitness levels look like. I mean, they have all these. They make him wear bras now, like training bras that take care of all their vitals.
We can all use our
vigorously.
We can use our eyes, can't we? We can use our eyes and look at it, right? I'm not crazy.
To some extent, for sure.
Okay.
I'm just saying. It might not be as blasphemous as you're making it out to be.
Okay, but what about a guy like Hannes Horn, who's also ramping back in from an injury and is a necessary cog in your ability to win a game like San Diego? It just seems odd to me, again, to use him on Saturday, bring him back out on Wednesday, to use him again on Saturday. And I know he's not in the most, mileage task position at left center back or left back or whatever he's playing that day. It seems risky playing Klaus for the last 15 minutes here. I know he got a goal. I know that's nice. But, he's a guy who has to do a lot of sprinting, and it weighs on him late in games. Klaus's fitness in the 87th minute of Saturday night for San Diego is just so much more important than him being in the game tonight in the 87th minute, I guess is my issue. And
I agree with that one, especially because there are so many young forwards that they could have brought up to play that striker position.
Young forwards.
That's the one that I will agree with. And you could even argue Miggy Perez could have been brought into the midfield. And I think that was telling about what management really thinks about him and where he's going to end up, with this season and everything. But I definitely agree with Joao Klaus. But he did only play 15 minutes. So, and him getting a goal, do you think that the risk paid off in this situation?
It depends what his fitness is. It depends what his fitness is like on Saturday, and they can massage how they train with him and things like that. And so they have a lot of control. I'm saying they can massage. They can just massage the minutes. They can also do that. So they also have they have control over the training, and so that's not linear. But it's also the risk of putting the guys out there. I mean, Morales leaves with an injury. They don't have a lot of depth right now at center midfield. Volum's down on the field a couple times. Losing him, even to like a twisted ankle for a week, if they don't have Wallum, I don't know how they win the game against San Diego. He's just such an important cog to so many different things they do. It seemed like they were pressing some risky buttons, considering part of the season. But I guess maybe their point of contention might be behind closed doors of, we almost
had to be won.
Yes, we almost had a tie game in like the 79th minute, and that would have been pretty problematic going forward. So I get that point as well. It's just I have a lot of questions, and I'm very interested to see how does it affect the lineup on Saturday. How does it affect the play of the team in the 80th minute on Saturday?
Yeah, I agree. By the way, are you sitting in the media booth? I want to see what your view's looking like at this point with like 40 minutes gone after the match, or 30 minutes gone since the match has ended here. Let's see what Rock's looking at up in the media booth at Energizer Park. This is my own curiosity. Look at that view. That's beautiful.
There it
that
is.
is awesome to see.
There's the view. There's the view. You can see it. Actually, let's twist it. You can see that we got a little bit of the we got the
Ultra
Ferris
Club
wheel
down there.
We got the Ferris wheel in the background. You see the purple and the green Joker colors. Can you see the skyline a little bit? A little bit in the background. You can see the skyline. Yeah, it's a beautiful night in St. Louis. Up here on the press level talking. I'm sure right now that they're talking with Olaf and company downstairs. We wanted to come talk to the people right after the game. Usually when we do home games, we like to go talk to the pressers. But I was talking to Justin Horniker, who works for St. Louis Magazine, who does fantastic. I was talking to Tom Timmerman, who does wonderful work for the Post-Dispatch. And they were going to handle pretty much my only questions for Olaf tonight, which is the things I'm bringing up to you tonight, which is why did
certain
Horn
guys play? Yeah.
Yes, that's my whole bugaboo. Obviously, very happy to see Joey Zielinski play. An incredible goal there. Loved
Yeah,
seeing
that was
him get
fun.
out there. I will say I was a little bit disappointed in Makai Joyner, not in his play necessarily. Just I was disappointed that he didn't get the opportunities I wanted him to get. He had one touch in the box in the first half. He had 4 touches in the box in the second half, and I was just a little bit disappointed again that they deployed him in kind of like that Wallen-esque role, and it just meant that he had to be tracking back more often than I wanted to see. I wanted to see him in an out and out, wide 10 role, as they call it here with St. Louis City, an out and out wide 10 role, and just let him get after things from that left side where he can cut into his right foot. That's what I wanted to see. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that necessarily, but I was happy he did get to play as long as he did. Solid game.
Yeah, honestly, I really expected Pompeo to come out earlier in that match, and then Makai to shift up into that position you're just talking about. I'm surprised we didn't see that. It would have made a little bit of sense if Pompeo was expected to have a significant role on Saturday. Obviously, Silva did end up coming out of this match, so we'll see if he has a significant role in the books on Saturday against San Diego FC. Of course, that's the storyline going forward. Is now can City find a way to get points in the table? Of course, winning against Union Omaha is expected, and it's a result you had to get. You got it, good. Thumbs up. That's all you get from me is a thumbs up. Now can you go and do it at home against San Diego FC the following weekend?
I don't have a lot of faith in it, to be honest with you. And part of that is that they haven't is that they've regressed over the last 2 weeks. And when you look at what happened when they played them in San Diego, it's not a matchup that went well for them last time. Obviously, they didn't lose. It was a draw, but it was an ugly game. And they just haven't figured out how to play teams that played that higher line that we saw San Diego play. So are they able to figure it out this time? I think the issue now, and this isn't a new thing, people have been talking about this the last few weeks, is that when you don't have progression, you can't get the ball to the dangerous players up front. But if you don't have the dangerous players up front, it doesn't matter if you have the progression to get it there. And right now, City's can't find a way to get a lineup that has both. Yeah. And so I think they need to just pick your poison, and kind of dance with the one that brought you. So I hope we see as many dribblers as possible. I hope we see Celio Pompeu. I hope we see a second half of Jay Reed. And I hope the plan is to break this press from San Diego with some 1v1 moments. And I think that would be perfect not only for the game plan, but maybe perfect for a fan base at home that is dying for some moments. Credit to Justin Horniker, I already mentioned, from STL Magazine, for this incredible stat. Will, that's the first 2-goal game at home this season.
Oh, yeah, no shocker to me with the performances that we've seen.
Not
it's been 0-0, 0-0, 1-0. That's like about all we've seen. So, yeah, that's a tough one to swallow. But you know what? It could be the breakthrough.
Oh, Jesus.
It won't. I don't think it'll be. It won't be.
Ryan Fraley's sitting with us. He's chatting with us from the Metro. I'm impressed that it's still working in the tunnel. They've really upped the 5G capabilities inside the Metrolink tunnel since I took it last year. Brian Royce, I am concerned about Saturday and Wednesday. We are going to have rotation. We definitely can't lay an egg against Kansas. Yeah, that's why I'm wondering what's going to go on here, and that's kind of the big thing. Like I was saying, the other reporters, I think, are going to be asking Olaf a lot about what the rotation is going to look like. A big thing is going to be, does somebody like Rasmus Alm, Chris Durkin, Thomas Totland, do they become available maybe on the back end of this schedule congestion? Maybe are they a guy who becomes available for 45 minutes in what I assume, I haven't double-checked the score, but I assume Minnesota United is going to beat Louisville.
Minnesota United did close that out.
Okay, cool. So your matchup in Minnesota for the Cup game, are those guys going to be available for maybe 45-minute runs there? So there's a lot of questions. Olaf's going to be answering a lot of what did this player look like in training today questions tomorrow and Friday before this weekend, and also next week for the midweek matchups. A lot of questions for the medical staff and Olaf about who's available what the rotation looks like, because a lot of people are on the return. Again, even getting a guy like Jay Reed back is important because it completely opens up the wingback rotation. And let's just say Totlin and Reed are back. Well, now all of a sudden Wallam's available as an attacker or as a midfielder, and everything that you could have done at the beginning of the season that you haven't been able to do at any point becomes available. And I do want to say my point. One more thing on Jay Reed. I didn't put it out for this week because I found out he wasn't going to be on the roster today, and so I didn't want to play it. But I think Friday, after I get a chance to ask Olaf about his thoughts on Jay Reed, I will be putting out my interview with Jay Reed that I conducted on Monday. Just a few short questions with him, but a great little conversation with Jay Reed. Got a chance to talk to him about the pros that he admires from the left back position that he tries to emulate, why he thinks that this system is actually going to be even better for his skill set. Some other questions with Jay Reed, including talking about kind of his mindset as he makes his return. So I'm really excited about Jay Reed. I think St. Louis City is really excited about Jay Reed. I'm excited to find out this week on Friday what Olaf Melberg has planned for Jay Reed, and look for that on Sports Hub STL for an article coming up here in the next week.
Yeah, I'm personally extremely excited about Jay Reed. I've talked about him plenty on both X, my Instagram, and on this City Hub podcast show. I really think he could be a key contributor. I think his one-on-one ability, oh my God. Forget everything I was saying about Jay Reed.
You know what the crazy thing is? Morales is like the one starter who I had no qualms or questions about playing tonight because he was suspended for the weekend. And I was like, yeah, you play him 45, 50 minutes. That makes sense. Bring in Miggy Perez off the bench for him. That was the one guy that I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That's not a risk. And they do not have a lot of depth at midfield. And
Melbourne might not have a choice. He might have to bring up Perez. I'm not sure that he'd play, but he'd sit on the bench.
Maybe we see a Leuven Hartl pivot.
Maybe we might see a Zielinski start with Watts in the midfield instead, but then you have no depth at right back.
There's always Watts. I keep shorting Watts, and that's on me. But as long as he's healthy, he'll probably get the spot just because the stability and the mindset of being kind of a defensive guy. That's rough though. Thanks to Brian Royce, who's I think watching the YouTube feed of the presser. Thanks to Brian for letting us know there about Morales, because that really complicates things. JGR is on the mend. I don't think he'd be available for this week, but maybe the midweek, maybe next week midweek, maybe up in Minnesota for the round of 16 cup match. Those could all be live for JGR. But
do you know how many minutes he got on Sunday?
He got 70-something.
70. That's actually not too
70.
bad. I think it's possible that he'd be fit for Saturday if they absolutely needed him. If he was doing 70 this past Sunday and didn't play tonight.
Yeah, I think you are. Yeah, I think you're potentially right. There really is. There's a lot of room for him there. I'm kind of surprised he played 70. But
me too.
Clearly they're working him back. Clearly they feel good about him, and so I guess it's hard for me to kind of question that. And you know what? I'm not gonna bet on that. But there is something I like to bet on, and that is with my DraftKings Pick 6 app. It's my favorite thing to do right now because I can use it with a baseball game when the Cardinals are getting ready to play. NBA playoffs are ripe now, and so I'm playing my Pick 6 app all day long for those NBA plays like I was doing tonight. And they're going for me pretty well so far because I picked some Knicks. It wasn't looking too good for me early, and just like St. Louis City, it looked good for me late as the Knicks made that comeback against the Celtics, and it looks like I'm going to win big on my DraftKings Pick 6 app. And you can join me because not only is it basketball season, but baseball season officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of the DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's a meatball like Adam Wainwright to Derek Jeter in the All-Star game, and it's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and, of course, Missouri. That's why I'm telling you about it, and plenty more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly. I'm going to say $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And I want to tell everybody about Hot Shots, our wonderful sponsor. Sports Hub, STL postgame shows, just like City Hub postgame, are brought to you in part by Hot Shots, who invite you to come out to their St. Charles location on Sunday, June 1st, to celebrate their 35th anniversary. The fun starts at noon with a parking lot party featuring the Budweiser Clydesdales. Prizes will be given away all day, and there's a dart tournament at noon, a bags tournament too, plus a chance to win Hot Shots tacos for a year. How are you going to win those tacos? Oh, just a Hot Shots taco eating contest. The best way to win tacos is to eat more tacos. Congratulations to Hot Shots on 35 years. Hot Shots, St. Louis home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. And one of the big things there, St. Louis City SC celeb bartenders. So if you want to meet the players, they do these events all the time where there's celeb bartenders over at the Pitch Athletic Club. A lot of great events. They know what they're doing, slinging behind the bar. So get on down to Hot Shots in St. Charles on Sunday, June 1st. Our good friends over at St. Charles. Will, your final thoughts on this match and looking forward to San Diego on Saturday?
I just want to go back to the one point. I want to really hit home the point that Joao Klaus scored a goal. Can that form continue? That will be the storyline to watch, not only against San Diego, but most importantly, in my opinion, against Sporting Kansas City, because should he score in that match or have just a really great, performance in that match, that could be a really good sign for him in the rest of this season. So, that's just the one thing for me. My final thoughts about this match are thumbs up.
Any thoughts on the attendance number and the reaction to last year's boycott?
Yeah, this is a little bit of this is rock poking the bear here. So I enjoy this. Obviously, a lot of folks may know that I took to X.
I'm going to separate myself from this. I'm going to separate myself from this and give everyone just that beautiful shot of Energizer Park all over again.
Yeah, listen, for me, looking at that beautiful Energizer Park, why would you not want to be there on a Wednesday night? Obviously, there's a lot of reasons. There were a lot of reasons why there was a low attendance at tonight's match. And on the broadcast, me being in Starkville, Mississippi, I'm obviously watching the broadcast on Paramount Plus tonight. It showed, and it was the most empty I've ever seen the stadium for a match where the senior roster was taking the pitch ever. And, it's a Wednesday. The ticket prices had some issues. Even the ticketing services this morning had some issues. It was a rainy evening, whatever. The team's not in the greatest run of form. There's so many excuses that fans could have made to not be there tonight. And so I don't expect a sellout in this situation. But what I do expect is more than 5,000 to 6,000 fans. I think that's just really a bad showing for a fan base that literally boycotted their own team over the Leagues Cup. And to get back in this tournament and then send 5,000 out, which, by the way, is significantly less than was there during the boycott for the Leagues Cup. I think that's really embarrassing. And I think that's a really bad look, not just for the fans and the general fans, but also for the supporter groups. And I'm not calling them out. I love the supporter groups. I want to throw that out there that I'm not at all dissing them. I'm just saying it's not a very good look. It's not a very good representation of what you're advocating for. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why it wasn't packed, because the one criticism I got when I talked about it on X was, well, you haven't seen what the supporter section is going to look like. I'm like, well, first of all, I didn't call out the supporter section. So I just called out the general fan base. Just want to make that very clear. I'm not calling out the supporter groups. But tonight at the match, the supporter section wasn't that full. It really wasn't. And anyone could have gone there. It was general admission. So, I don't know. For me, it's not the greatest thing. It's also not the hugest problem in the world, especially if in the next round, if the match is maybe a little more favorable. It's against another MLS team.
Yeah,
teams in better form, better attendance.
I think your point's very well taken. I think it's a good. I think there's reasons that I understand people are mad. The team hasn't been playing well, and those kind of things. But when you have the indignation because of the connection St. Louis has to the U.S. Open Cup, and that indignation was righteous and correct.
Yeah.
To not just completely barnstorm this game is a little bit disappointing. And so I do understand your perspective. from that way. Ryan Fraley says, I think the ticket prices were an issue. I have somebody else on Twitter saying that essentially that if you were a season ticket holder, you were paying 100% more for a ticket tonight than you would for a regular game. I saw tickets for $30 to $50 for general admission. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I see how is that's 100% more than what your ticket averages out to across the season. That just seems a little bit cheaper than I thought that the season
folks that
were.
are saying that are the ones who
I'm
have
just
the
surprised.
cheapest possible season tickets.
Okay.
And that is true. But
most places price it was way less. Okay,
yeah.
that makes a little bit more sense. That's why I'm a little bit confused, because I saw people mad about $50 tickets, but then I saw $30 tickets were still available. I know there was an issue with the website that SeatGeek was having where you couldn't click on the link earlier. So there were some tertiary things. But to your point, Will, you were tweeting out that there was going to be 6,000 yesterday, and you were essentially right on that one. So I mean that's fair.
Did they even announce the attendance number in stadium?
I don't think so. Brian Royce, by the way, this is his first time catching the show. Loved it. We'll continue to tune in. Well, Brian, we're here after every game with St. Louis City SC. So St. Louis City SC is playing a game after postgame. Come check out Sports Hub STL. We will be here. Sometimes we like to go after postgame to see what the coach is saying. Today we went right after the game because of just how this game went. But Brian Royce says in Philadelphia they had $10 tickets. Chicago, $13 tickets. This game should have been $15 with $5 beer and hot dogs. And listen,
now that I do agree with.
He's right. I actually completely agree with him. These are the kind of matches you do special promotions and you do things like that to get people in the door. So, because, I guess, is part of this maybe like kind of your, city's success is hurting them is part of this because we just had a 12,000 attendance City 2 match 4 days ago and then or 3 days ago, and then 3 days later a US Open Cup match, which is a bigger deal than a City 2 match, has half of that. I think that's also kind of playing into it, and that might be fair, but it also might be kind of might be kind of blaming City with City's own success for how well City 2 is doing and getting that 12,000 number, which I think was the 5th time that City 2 has reset their own attendance record for MLS Next Pro.
Yeah.
So I mean, there might be some relativity thing. We might be being unfair, but I do to your point, I see what you're saying, Will, and I think it's well said.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I know. Listen, I caught a lot of opinions in both directions. A lot who agreed with me, a lot who didn't. I listen. At the end of the day, the only thing I'm trying to say is that after how big of a deal was made about getting in the Open Cup and how important that tournament is to this city, and I'm not denying that. I agree with that. I agreed with the sentiment that we had to get back in the U.S. Open Cup. To then not show up is just a terrible look, and it's almost hypocritical in a lot of ways. So it was just frustrating to see for sure.
Ryan Fraley, I would suggest $25 tickets and a drink voucher. That would do the trick. I agree. That's a great point. Also, season ticket holders getting a deeper discount, like $10. Listen, I think these are all great ideas, all very well taken. Maybe even though it will be against an MLS team, maybe they take some of that initiative for a later round in the U.S. Open Cup. But that will be close out here for the show. We'll be back on Saturday night. St. Louis City faces off against San Diego. It's going to be a tricky one. They got controlled by San Diego in the second game of the season, the first ever game they faced off against the new expansion team. They walked away with a point, which they haven't done in a lot of games this season. So maybe that's something, but they got dominated for the majority of that.
It's not a point. It's just an advancement. City still aren't getting points in the standings.
Well, no. I'm saying against San Diego at the beginning of the season. They got a point, even though it was a crappy game. Yeah, they won tonight. They move on to round 16. We're moving on to the real things, which is MLS games are back in action. San Diego is going to be an incredibly difficult match on Saturday. Can they do it? Can they walk away with a very important 3 points? Can they walk away with a point in a much better game? Either way, no matter what the result is, right here on Sports Hub STL, we'll be covering it on Saturday night. Matthew Rocchio, Will Bratton, St. Louis City SC beat Union Omaha 2-0 in the round of 32 in the U.S. Open Cup. They advance to the round of 16, and they keep the dream alive that the U.S. Open Cup returns home for the first time since the middle 80s. We'll talk to you on Saturday, everyone. Thank you so much again for commenting in the chat. And if you want to be with us on Saturday after the San Diego game, like and subscribe to Sports Hub STL. Get that notification, and we'll talk to you later. The YouTube chat says it's going to be a 2-2 draw this weekend. I'm screenshotting this right now. Just did it right there. Screenshot in the YouTube chat. You better be here on Saturday night when we talk things over. I'm holding you to that prediction. If it's 2-2, I'll Venmo you $5. All right. That is,
okay.
Not kidding. The YouTube chat. Be here on Saturday night. If it's a 2-2 draw, you're getting $5 to the Venmo. Everybody else will talk to you then. This has been Sports Hub STL, City Hub STL, presented by Hot Shots, home of STL sports fans since 1990, and DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.